The void between galaxies had no memory, but the tribunal of ash did. It drifted at the edge of the crylith expanse like a held breath, its hull blacker than the space around it, etched with names. 500,000 years of names. Every human who had died when the crylith burned Earth's colonies to slag, scratched into alloy that would never corrode, never forget. Admiral Darian Voss stood on the observation deck, hands clasped behind his back, watching the swirl of dying stars that marked the border of crylith space. He was not young. None of the remnant fleet's commanders were young, not in the way that word had once meant. 500 millennia of cryocycling, gene repair, and slow patient breeding in hidden arcs beneath dead moons had turned young into a word for children who had never seen open sky. Admiral. The voice belonged to Captain Reyes, sharp even after a century of service. Long-range sensors confirm it. Zallar's home fleet is mustering at the crylith throne world. They know we're coming. Good, Voss said. I'd hate for this to be a surprise. He had waited 500,000 years for this morning. Not him personally, no human body lasted that long, not even with the augmentations the survivors had clawed together in the dark. But the will had lasted. Passed from commander to commander, generation to generation, etched into training simulations and bedtime stories alike, we remember Earth. We remember the fire. We are coming back. Humanity had not spent those 500,000 years cowering. They had spent it building. Emperor Zallar sat upon a throne carved from the bones of a planet his ancestors had cracked open 400 millennia ago, and for the first time in 3,000 years of his own long reign, he felt something he did not have a comfortable word for. His advisors called it caution. His generals called it prudence. Zallar, alone in the dark of his private chambers, called it by its true name, fear. The crylith Empire spanned 11,000 systems. It had conquered, absorbed, or exterminated 412 sapient species in its history, humanity merely one entry on a very long list, notable only because the conquest had gone wrong. The crylith fleet that burned Earth's colonies should have finished the job. Should have hunted down every surviving ship, every hidden ark, every desperate human seed vault drifting in the dark. Instead, something had gone wrong at Earth itself, a defense so fierce, so suicidal, so utterly unwilling to surrender that the conquest fleet had bled out 3/4 of its strength taking a single, doomed homeworld. The crylith had won. But they had never forgotten the cost. And now the humans were back. Not as refugees. Not as scattered survivors begging for mercy. As a fleet that outnumbered his own. Bring me the strategists, Zallar said to the dark. All of them. We will not make the same mistake our ancestors made. We will not underestimate them again. It was, perhaps, the wisest thing he ever said. It would not be enough. The Battle of the Crylith Gate began the way all great battles begin in the history books, with silence. Voss watched from the Tribunal of Ash's command throne as 4,000 crylith warships arranged themselves in the void, a wall of crimson hulls bristling with weapons that had ended 400 civilizations. Behind them, the throne world glowed dull orange, ringed by orbital fortresses the size of small moons. Against them, 2,600 human ships. Fewer. Smaller, in raw tonnage. By every metric the crylith strategists had calculated, humanity should have retreated, should have sued for terms, should have done anything but what they were about to do. All ships, Voss said, his voice carried fleet-wide through 500,000 years of refined comtech, this is Admiral Voss. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. 500,000 years ago, our ancestors stood on a dying world and watched the sky burn. They had no fleet. No empire. No allies. They had nothing but the choice to fight anyway, so that something of us would survive to remember. We are that memory. We are not here for conquest. We are not here for empire. We are here to finish what they started, and to make certain that no other species ever stands beneath a crylith sky and watches their world burn the way ours did. A pause. somewhere on 2,600 bridges, men and women who had trained their entire lives for this single moment gripped their consoles. "For Earth," Voss said. "Engage." What followed was not a battle so much as a reckoning. The Krylith fought with the brutal efficiency of an empire that had never truly lost, overwhelming firepower, layered defense grids, void cannons capable of cracking a ship's hull in a single volley. For the first 20 minutes, it looked, to any Krylith strategist watching, exactly like every other engagement in their long and bloody history. Then the human fleet did something the Krylith had never accounted for, because no species in 400 years of conquest had ever survived long enough to develop it. They fought like people who had already lost everything, and built an entire civilization around the singular purpose of making sure it never happened to anyone else ever again. Every system on every ship had been designed, redesigned, and refined across 20,000 generations, with one question driving every engineer, every tactician, every gene line bred for command: how do we beat them next time? Human fighters didn't just dodge Krylith point defense, they had been running tactical simulations against captured Krylith weapon data for 400,000 years, and their evasion patterns exploited firing cycle gaps the Krylith gunnery crews didn't even know existed. Human shield harmonics had been tuned, generation after generation, to the exact frequency signature of Krylith void cannons, bleeding 70% of incoming damage into harmless heat. And human boarding parties, augmented, fast, merciless, began punching through Krylith hulls not with brute force, but with cutting patterns reverse-engineered from the very weapons that had once cut through human ships at Earth. "Impossible," Zalor whispered, watching his strategic display fill with red, Krylith red, his own ships, dying in clusters. "They've had 500,000 years to study us. We've had 500,000 years to forget them." That was the truth of it, and it was the only truth that mattered. The Krylith had moved on to 400 other conquests. Humanity had moved on to nothing. Every resource, every mind, every drop of cultural will for 500,000 years had been bent toward a single unbroken purpose. Revenge, refined into an art form. By the time the orbital fortresses fell, not destroyed, but boarded, their crews staring in disbelief at human soldiers who fought with the calm patience of people who had rehearsed this exact moment 10,000 times in simulation, Zalor understood that the war was already lost. What remained was only the manner of the losing. He met Voss not in surrender, but in the throne room itself, beneath the bone-carved ceiling of a hall built from a murdered world, flanked by the last of his royal guard. Voss came with 12 Marines and no fear at all. "You came for vengeance," Zalor said. "It was not a question." "We came for an ending," Voss said. "Vengeance was just the door we walked through to get here." "What ending?" Voss looked at the throne, at the bones beneath it, at 500,000 years of conquered worlds compressed into a single dim hall. "You're going to release every species you've ever subjugated. You're going to dismantle the weapons that let you do it. And you're going to spend whatever years you have left understanding exactly what it cost the people you hurt." Voss's eyes did not waver. "We're not going to do to you what you did to us. That was never the plan. The plan was to make sure you could never do it to anyone else." "And if I refuse?" Voss did not answer with words. He simply gestured, once, toward the viewport, where 2,600 human warships hung in silent formation around a throne world that had no fleet left to defend it. Zalor, Emperor of the Krylith, conqueror of 412 worlds, looked at the fire in the sky that his ancestors had once delighted in setting upon others, and understood, at last, exactly what humanity had carried with them across 500,000 years of darkness. Not hatred. Something colder and far more patient. The bill had finally come due.